You are listening to the Brand Architect Podcast, and this is your host, Ani Alexander.
Hello, hi there, and welcome to the Brand Architect Podcast, the podcast that will help you establish your brand and grow your online audience. It's me, Annie Alexander, and I welcome you to the show and say thank you once again for coming back to it over and over again. So I hope that you're not from those who really hate Mondays and start the week with the negative note. I hope that you're enjoying your day, that your week is at a really good start and you're going to have an awesome week ahead of you. So today I'm having an interview which turned out to be pretty good, and based on what I cover with my guest, you will be able to learn how to grow your brand and make it successful. So let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brand Architect Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. I'm talking to Phil Pallen. He's a friend I met at the New Media Europe, and he had an amazing speech over there. So that's where I spotted him first, but then you know how it is. You go ahead and start connecting online and see what people do, and what they create actually speaks louder than words. So I really like what he does. I also love his philosophy because he believes that the best branding creates the in-person experience. So he basically helps brands to be born, to grow, and to become successful. Was that the right definition, Phil?
Yes, it was. That was excellent. That was everything that I do.
Okay, great. So obviously, brand architect and what you do are so much in line in terms of topics that we can cover. So I guess whatever we will be talking about will be exactly what the listeners are curious about. So let's start from the very beginning. First of all, how did you get into doing what you're doing now?
Sure. How did I get to doing this? Well, I was, like most people when they graduate, trying to get an internship, and I found that I found that it was harder to get a job after an internship. So I thought, okay, I guess I have an option here. I could work on helping people get better at what they do, helping them with websites, helping them with their businesses in a way that just made sense to me. Or I could just keep applying for jobs that I don't seem to be getting. So it really was born from the fact that I just moved to LA. I wanted to stay here. And I figured I'll just start a business. And I didn't even really do that consciously, starting a business. I did it because I knew that there was a need. There were smaller clients that needed help building logos and websites and all of those things. I made that decision to start helping people rather than waiting to work for someone else. And so I'm so happy that it all worked out that way, because now I'm in control of my lifestyle and when I work and what I do, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh, it sounds amazing. So basically, you're one of the many accidental entrepreneurs that I ended up interviewing, because I guess many end up becoming entrepreneurs by what happens to them in life. Many get fired, many don't get jobs. And I guess at the end, when you're looking backwards, it ends up to be a blessing. The obstacles and challenges they went through became actually a really good sense of choosing what they chose at the end and being in a much better place. So that's nice. I mean, you mentioned logo and you mentioned different things, but we all know it's so much more than that, right? We sort of, many people, that's the biggest problem, that many people think that branding and creating brand is just about logo, choosing the right colors and having a website up. So since you have been working with so many clients before, do you see any trend? What is the biggest challenge that they come across in the very beginning? What is the biggest pain point that they have?
Well, I think in the very beginning, people don't really know where to start. It's pretty overwhelming because you're juggling a lot of elements.
Mm-hmm.
You're juggling a lot of things. So I think the number one thing is that people are a little overwhelmed with where to begin because there's so much to do. The to-do list is so long that you're like, okay, where do I start? So typically, and anyone who's familiar with what I teach and what I say at conferences, and even how I work with clients, I break everything into 3 steps. So before we can sell the house, which people are always eager to do, right? Sticker for sale sign out front and want to promote their brands and grow their brands. A lot of times you can't do that properly if you haven't done a good job of step 1 and 2. Step 1 is positioning your brand.
Mm-hmm.
How are you positioned? How are you revisiting your positioning after 1 year? It's something that you should do every single year, at least. And then, once you're feeling confident about your positioning in terms of where you're going with all of this, build something to show for it. That's your photography, your brand identity, your website, and your social profiles. Once those elements are taken care of, then you can promote your brand, and only then, knowing that that's when you're actually going to get the results that you deserve because you've done your homework.
Okay, I see. So do you mind if we just take it step by step and try to go through the process in that case? So let's say I'm a completely newbie. I have no clue about, you mentioned the first stage being positioning. So I have no clue how it's done. What is it that I have to start with? And so what do I do? You can take me as a case study.
Yeah,
if you
sure.
need to.
So, okay, great. That's actually a really good idea that I don't think I've ever done on a podcast before. Let's do a little step by step. So, okay, so how long have you been in business?
Less than 3 years, a little bit over 2 years, but I went through a very big rebranding. So if we take it from that point, because I almost started from scratch and changed everything. From that point, maybe about 4 months.
Okay, great. So 4 months. So that's fairly new. So I even think, let's go with the 3 years. Let's pretend this is part of your most recent rebrand. So, okay, what would be the most prominent thing that's changed from when you started to what you're doing now, if you could sum it up even in a few words?
Well, why I say I changed almost everything is because the main thing changed in terms of who I wanted to serve and who my target audience was.
Yes, I was actually thinking that when we were talking before we clicked record. You know your audience very well. You know exactly who you're speaking to in this podcast, and you're crafting your content around that audience. That's the number one thing. The formula I give people for positioning their brand is simple. Something you love to do, something that would be a hobby of yours if money was no object and you could just do something for fun for the rest of your life, was something you love to do paired with something others need. And that's based on research. That second element is what takes it from hobby to business. Mm-hmm. And that's really where you got to have research to back up why what you do and how you do it is different than what's already out there. So part of this is knowing your audience. So you know your audience. It sounds to me like you've done your research to know that there's a need for people to learn how to launch their brands, smaller brands, and then maybe even take that market research further. Talk to some of your listeners, talk to some of your clients and ask them, why did you hire me? Why me over many other people around the world that could help you with this? Mm-hmm. So that's starting to do the market research to get that feedback to know, okay, it's just informing the way you've positioned a little bit. And so I think you've done parts of these. And then obviously if you've done a rebrand, then you've revisited the build. You feel really good about how you're positioned. And then you start to craft what you have to show for that. So communicating, okay, this is who I am in one sentence. And communicate that on your website. A lot of times what you'll say conversation just like this, I can pick up on great little one sentences that make for the best web copy. It shouldn't be a novel on your website, your about page. Mm-hmm. It needs to be short, punchy. It needs to grab our attention, and that's that. So all those elements kind of come together. In the build phase, I typically approach it in this order: photography first, brand identity, website, and then update your social profiles with all your new branding and copy. And then really that kind of is a nice segue to be able to start promoting your brand effectively. So that's kind of the three-part little process, using you as a loose case study there.
Okay, I see. Well, basically, it's very interesting you said about the differentiator and why you element, because as you said, it's pretty crowded out there. It's very noisy, especially the online world is very noisy. You have loads of people doing almost the same thing. I mean, when I started podcasting, there weren't many podcasters. Now thousands and thousands new podcasts are emerging. So even that is not very, even that is becoming crowded already. So what is the best way? You already mentioned engaging with your audience, connecting with them and getting feedback from them directly. How else can one actually define that uniqueness, that one thing that sets them apart and makes them stand out?
Yeah, that's really the most important part of this, because you have to be aware that there's other people out there who can do what you do. So why do they keep coming back to you? Think of it with this analogy. So you can't survive with content alone. So if people just want answers, they can go to Google, right? They can go to Google, they can go to Yahoo Answers. They will get the answer. What you need to think about is that I have what's called a content to personality ratio. And you're on this ratio, you're on this scale between these two defining elements, your content and your personality. And you're never one without the other, but you're somewhere on this scale that defines you in a unique way. You're a unique makeup of both of these elements. So content alone means that people will just go online and find the answer. They don't care if it comes from you. They just want the answer. Personality means that, it kind of lacks substance, but that means they don't really care what you say. They just want to hear it from you. They want your personality. So you're a mix of these two things. You want to think, okay, what is it I can give people? And how can I give it to them in a way that keeps them coming back to get it from me instead of someone else? That's really, to break it down to a science, that is how I would think about defining what it is that you do that's unique and keeps them coming back for more.
Well, I see your point, and I totally agree, because as soon as you become a little bit personal and start opening up and sharing your personality, things really work out much, much better. That's at least my experience, because I've been pretty neutral in the very beginning, but as soon as I started putting me and myself and my personality into the branding, it started really picking up. So that sort of makes me think about the following. For example, in the very beginning, I was exclusively working with writers and authors, or writers who wanted to become authors. And as you know, writers are very introverted people. So for them, it's pretty difficult to... So, I mean, they prefer to hide behind the characters they are writing up in their fiction, right? So does it mean that introverted people can't really create personal brands? Or if they can, what is this one thing they have to overcome? How could you help them specifically?
I think introverts have the power to make even more effective personal brands. I would argue that, because I think we get less from introverts in terms of me. So I think when we do get information from an introvert, it's more meaningful. So I think they have the potential to have better brands, and I think more engaging content. But how I look at this a little bit differently is that it's not so much about whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. It's about being self-aware. We have no choice, literally no choice, but to think of ourselves as a product. Even if you're selling a product, you're still a product. You're still part of that experience. We have to be self-aware to know where we're strong and where we're not. And so because we are now an inevitable part of the product, for example, look at pitches, look at Kickstarters, look at deals on Shark Tank or Dragon's Den. This is how it works. We've got a product, we've got a service, we've got the person, we've got the story, we've got that unique element. So it's less about your personality and more about being self-aware in the sense of staying true to whoever you are. So introvert, extrovert, both fine. need to be self-aware. You need to be very self-aware to know where you're strong, where you're not, so that you can craft your brand around that.
Okay, I see. And I totally agree. Well, actually, I have these two things that we hear very often and they contradict each other. So I wanted to get your opinion on this. On one side, we have advocates of being yourself, which I am, really believe in. The other thing is we have some people giving advice which says fake it until you make it. So what is this balance and how do you approach that part in terms of branding? Do you actually go there completely being vulnerable yourself, sharing all your failures, showing the whole situation behind the scenes and opening up completely? Or do you actually fake it a little bit to get the image and impression you want your brand to leave?
I like that question. It is definitely a mix of both. Which I know is such a boring answer, but it really is. And I can kind of elaborate on that. Being vulnerable allows you to be relatable. My background before I started in branding was working with TV. Well, I was still working in branding, but I was working with TV hosts on helping them build memorable brands that would help them book auditions. So this was very much something we dealt with. So even just there, when I told you that story, I'm starting to reveal. I'm starting to tell stories and give you a background on me so that you, the viewer, feel you kind of, or listener in this case, you qualify me and it makes me more qualified to give you advice, right, based on my background. So when you reveal, you tell those stories, it helps people understand and it helps them pay attention because humans love stories. We don't like being told what to do, but we love hearing a story about someone. Even if it's boring, we'll still listen to any story. So there's that which helps to reveal. People start to trust you. People start to listen to you. Fake it till you make it. I'd be lying if I said that wasn't something that I've used to build my brand. I mean, I think back to when I first started. I charged $30 an hour to make websites. Now I consult for 10 times that plus. And that's, I've grown my brand because I'm constantly thinking about where am I going next? What am I doing next? Right? Yeah, I'll tell you a little story. Like, most of my team, located around the world, but primarily in North America, they all work remotely. So I flew them all out last year to do a photo shoot together. And I did that, A, because it was fun and we all got to meet one another. We've been working remotely. B, I want to manifest that. I want to hire all those people full time. Many of them work part time for me, and we scale up their responsibilities depending on client projects. But that was me manifesting. If you go to my website, you'll see the shot of all of us. But that's me manifesting that. I want that to be real life. I want all of those people to work for me full time as my business grows. So, that's me putting out that image, right? Putting out that image of that next phase of branding. I'm constantly on to the next thing. Once I finish designing my website, I'm already designing the next one. It's just how my brain works. It's how I built a business, and it's just how it works for me. I use branding, and I encourage people to do the same. Use branding as a really powerful tool for growth. Brand not necessarily just who you are now, but who you're becoming, and you can actually manifest that if your branding is right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned something that I picked up immediately as a fiction writer. You spoke about stories and the impact that the stories have while you're presenting your brand. And I totally agree that, stories are the things that actually attract people and make listen and resonate with you, basically. But we also know that we can actually come up with different angles of the same story and know which part to modify and amplify based on what kind of brand we want to establish, right? So how do you approach that? Like, how do you pick the real stories of your life that are relevant to your brand?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And people have to learn how to kind of audit for those stories in everyday conversation. When you sit down and try and write a story in a Microsoft Word doc, it's not going to come. I mean, for some people it could, but what's so much better is when you start to listen to yourself in everyday conversations like this, right? I actually, before we started this podcast, I actually opened up a plain text edit doc just in case I said something that I've never said before, just because I'm speaking with you about a topic, that I'm obviously familiar with. But these little nuggets of gold will come from conversation. It'll come from client calls. It'll come from chatting with entrepreneurial friends. You need to be ready to take all of these and do something with them. It'll give you the best ideas for content if you can just listen to yourself and write it down somewhere trustworthy. Create a system, be it Trello, Evernote, you name it. You must create a system to essentially house an inventory of content ideas. That's the very best advice that I can give you on that front.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, makes sense. Absolutely. I love taking notes, and it really helps a lot. So let's talk about the audio. I mean, in the very beginning, when you are establishing your brand and trying to gain audience, no matter how much content and how good your content is that you create, most probably in the first phase, you will be talking to yourself, you will be writing to yourself, and you won't really have enough people who will be consuming your content and providing feedback. So you have to sort of persevere and move forward for quite a while, for at least a few months, right? Before you start getting noticed. So what is the best way? I mean, how can you find out and figure out whether what you're doing during those, let's say, silent period is the right track? Because when you get feedback, it's easy. You sort of, people talk to you, how they perceive what you're doing. But in the beginning, it's a little bit of lonely process, right?
It is. And it's one of those things where you just have to keep going. The more you do it, the more you're going to learn. And the more you learn, that's going to inform how you move forward. I know that sounds vague, but think about it. If you're launching a business, you don't have any clients yet, you're not going to get a client if they know that you're their first client, unless it's someone you really, that's where the fake it till you make it kind of comes in. But be very clear on who you're speaking to. If they don't exist yet, then do the market research to know that they do exist and that they need your help. Once you know that they need your help, you're going to craft content for that specific audience. And if you've done your research, you will attract clients and you will attract customers. And the experience of that needs to be like you've done it before, if that makes sense. Like, and the beautiful thing is this is all out there. There's a lot of other people doing it. You can go to their websites. You can see how they structured their services. I'm not saying copy any of these people, but let what others have done inform the way that you do things a little bit differently, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, it totally does. So once you already have an audience, and it's great because once you start getting feedback, you have the chance to know them better. You have the chance to directly interact with them. So that's when the awesomeness comes, because you don't really have to self-motivate yourself anymore. You have people around you who do that already. So what is the best way? I mean, many people are using different ways to interact and communicate with their audiences. Some are relying mainly on their email list. Some are using Facebook groups. Some others are having, live online live calls and Q&A sessions and stuff like that. So what has been the most efficient way for you to actually interact with your audience? Because you also have a podcast, right?
Yeah, for me, it hasn't actually been an email list. That's been a very new development for me. It's something I'd been collecting for a few years, but there were also a few years that went by where I just didn't send emails. I didn't do any of that. It just was not something that came naturally to me. I didn't enjoy doing it. And I didn't really know how to do it yet in an authentic way to my audience. It wasn't something I was excited about doing, sending emails. So that's actually since January. That's been my New Year's resolution that I've kept up. I've started getting back into emails, and I'm sending people, something valuable every single week. But it took me, I had to arrive at that, right? So for me, what came naturally was Twitter. I love Twitter. Twitter's probably been the way I've grown my brand the fastest. I even wrote a book about it a few years ago. I have 50,000 followers, and it's I interact with a lot of people over there every single day, and I love the limit. I love the 140 character limit. I just love that things can move quickly. People have to really keep what they want to say down to a few words. I just love it. So for me, that's been a strong platform. But for anyone, I always encourage them rather than be mediocre on 10 platforms, be really, really, really good on 3. So for me, Twitter was number 1, Pinterest was number 2, given the visuals and the visual branding that I do. That makes me more unique than people that just kind of give branding strategy. The visual element to what I do, the design element is unique. So Pinterest is a good platform. And then I travel a lot because I want to. So I use Instagram to document those adventures. So for me, those are my 3 platforms, and I encourage everyone to kind of have those 3 that you go to, that you enjoy updating, but that also have your audience queued up so that obviously, that it makes what you're doing have purpose.
Yeah, well, it's nice you mentioned that because it sort of made me think. We create content for our brand and for what we are offering, on topics related to that, right? But then also we create content for our social media presences, which may not, they overlap sometimes, but they may not be identical and the same thing. So, and because it's so easy now to launch a podcast, to live stream, to do all these things, barrier to entry is so low that we have to filter so much stuff. I mean, we get so much low quality content that, just because someone could push that, go live button and talk about whatever he wants, makes us, our feed really crowded with things that might not really be of a good quality. So how one ensures this avoiding this temptation of just going in for the sake of going in because we were told that we should be there every single day, and just, bullshitting around just because they have to. So
yeah. You know what I did, which is so funny? Before I started podcasting, I didn't start small. Like for me, it was like, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it right. I bought all the equipment. I emailed our friend Mike Russell and said, tell me all the things that you would buy. Not that a starter should buy. I said, I want a fancy microphone. I want to spend money. I want to invest in this so that I actually follow through. It was that investment, like investing in, something that you would save money for. That is what forced me to keep doing it. I had this, which is so silly, but that's how I think human nature works, right? If you feel invested in something, then you're going to, prioritize it. For me, podcasting, I decided to start podcasting because for me, sitting here having a conversation felt much more natural than writing. I don't like blogging. I don't really like communicating in written form. I don't mind it, but it takes me a while. Whereas speaking at conferences, creating YouTube videos, anything that's spoken comes a lot more naturally to me. In university, I did radio and I did all these kinds of things. And so I love it. I really love podcasting. Not that we need, more podcasts out there, but if you have an idea and you have a unique perspective on something, you definitely have a shot of success if you choose that platform. The other thing I'll say about podcasting is that I just love that it's scheduled time every single week for me to practice disseminating my ideas, gathering content, communicating in a concise way. If anything, it's more useful for me than it is for anyone else. And that's kind of a selfish perspective. And of course, I, make sure that the audience gets something valuable from it. But it's just a great way to keep on top of myself as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for me, like the criteria, and I guess we both have been doing it for a while because like the what the saddest statistics is? Most of the podcasters give up after episode 7. That's the average number, which is like episode 7. You just figure out how things work. You just start rolling. Definitely that's the silent period you're going through. Most probably episode 7 is when you're talking to yourself still.
Yes. You're still figuring out your format and that's definitely still in the discovery phase. I think anything under 10, you're still figuring out how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty sad. But for me, like when I think it's any type of content. When you create, you choose your format and platform and get into it. It's just about coming up with the goal of the thing. Like, what do you want people to get out of it? and just always to remember that you should value their time, because these days, I mean, if they're listening to your podcast for 40 minutes, they shouldn't end up at the episode thinking, oh my God, I wasted 40 minutes, right?
Absolutely. Then you've lost them forever.
Yeah, absolutely. They will never come back for that. So I guess, the message is, no matter what you're creating, just be aware about the people who will be consuming it, and make sure that, if you skip a day or if you skip something in your schedule, don't go out and do it just because you have to be out there. It's better not to be at all, rather than ending up with a low quality thing, because it also affects the brand, right? If you have a low quality content, that is part of the brand and reputation, right?
I completely agree. And I didn't start sending email blasts until I felt like I could really deliver something of value. It took longer than I could have ever anticipated to arrive at that. But now I feel very proud of what I'm sending. I think it's a good representation of me. But prior to that, it just was not the right format for me. And that is okay, right? You have to be realistic. Many people are solopreneurs. They're building their own business. You need to be realistic about what you can handle on your own and what you can prioritize. That process of prioritizing is really what keeps things moving and growing. So you've got to be realistic, though. You can't bite off more than you chew, because if you try to do too much, you'll end up doing nothing well. Yeah. It's really important.
Yeah, that's true. So let's go to the stage when, let's say, everything works out, we do things right, and we're in a place where we are already known in our sphere. People know our brand name. People know what we're about. We have an audience. Everything is great. And that's when everyone approaches you, even people who rejected to put your blog post as a guest post, people who didn't want to interview you on a podcast and all that stuff. It starts getting back to you. So you end up having loads of media exposure. You end up having different proposals, different people approaching you. And I guess lots of partnership deals as well. So how do you deal with that? Because I think when you're starting collaborating, or when you are going on different events and speaking or giving out interviews, you are actually influencing your brand in a certain way, because you're connecting your image with certain things. So how do you filter that part? Because, it's very tempting to say yes to everything, obviously, but it's not what we're supposed to do, right?
I struggle with that. I'm a yes guy in terms of like, hey, let's get together. Let's do this. Let's go for coffee. Let's have a conversation about that. And in fact, it's hard. I really still struggle with that. Even last night, I had friends that were visiting from out of town. They're like, Phil, come for dinner. And I was like, no, yes, no, I can't, because I have to go home and I have to finish a project that's important to me and that I'm on deadline for. And life is full of that, And so for your brand, abso-freaking-lutely, you're going to be pulled in a lot of different directions, but you just, again, need to be crystal clear on your priorities. So, the first question I ask someone if they're wanting to work together is, what's your goal? Why are we doing this? And I mean, I'm not going to judge you for whatever you say. I just want you to have an answer. A perfectly fine answer is, I want to be famous. I want to launch a book successfully. I want to build a brand that makes me seen more as an expert. All of those are very beautiful, tangible goals that I can help people achieve and have helped people achieve, right? But you've got to know what they are, and you've got to make sure everything comes back to that goal so that you can actually accomplish it.
Well, actually, do you think making money is the sufficient goal? Because that's what you're getting very often as a want, right?
Yeah, I get that want a lot, obviously. And if someone's wanting to pay me to do something, then they want to see a return on all of that. So I hear that a lot. For me, the brand therapist kicks in and I go, okay, so we want to make money, but how are we going to make money? That's where the strategy element comes in, and the listening part. I want to listen to someone and really hear that opportunity to do something differently than what's already done out there. So it's kind of a mix of listening to that, listening for that perspective that I think we can turn into a business. Yeah. Okay.
So since we spoke about being different and doing things not like others, I know that you've done something that I at least I personally don't know anyone doing it. So I saw the brand visual, the logo of your brand, tattooed on you, on your wrist, right? It was the wrist, right?
Yes, I have my logo tattooed to my wrist, which I know is pretty dramatic. But in fact, I had 2 clients prior to this that had logos that I designed for them permanently tattooed on their body. And I found that really inspiring. It's like, it's one thing for someone to say, I love my logo. It's another thing for them to put it on their body forever. So that I thought more about it. It really excited me. And I thought, you know what? If these clients are going to get something that we've designed for them tattooed on the body forever, then I should be doing that, given that what I do for a living is branding people. And I thought, wow, getting a tattoo of your logo on your body really is branding in a very traditional sense. So I did it. Getting a tattoo is not normally something I would ever do, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so fun. And I have that little reminder on my wrist every single day. And I think it's awesome.
Oh yeah, it's very original, and it's I guess it's a way when you told about buying the equipment, expensive equipment for podcasting to make sure that you stick to it. I guess doing the tattoo is even more extreme in that sense as well. You just you can't run away from your brand anymore. You have to stick to it.
You can't change it.
Yeah,
exactly. You have to stick to it, and that's so important. I think one of my challenges is that I love to build things, I love to improve things, but I've really got to focus, for me, and I think a lot of people can relate to this. I've got to promote it. I've got to get it out there. Once you build something beautiful, you need to get it out there, because if no one sees it, then what does it matter? So for me and my personal brand, I'm always struggling with that. I love to build things. I love to rebuild. I love to redesign. So by getting it tattooed also forced me to say, okay, this is your branding. Now go live it. Go put it out there into the world.
Oh, yeah. Sounds amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming over. Thank you for your time. I'm sure that the listeners got a lot out of it. And I guess what I can wish you and our listeners is create the brand that you're so proud of, that you feel super comfortable wearing the tattoo on your body.
Yes, exactly. That's the goal. It might not happen overnight, but start that process. Let it grow. The final words that I'll say is that you will grow as a person. You're constantly evolving. You're becoming better. You're learning more about yourself. That evolution that's happening in real life should happen online. The best branding recreates the in-person experience. So as you grow, your online brand should as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think we had fun. So I don't know about you, but I did. So
it was great. Yes, I always love chatting with you, so I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So take care, and all the best.
Thanks so much.
Okay, so that's all that I had for you today. I hope that it was useful. I hope you learned a thing or two. And I'm really waiting for your brand to end up growing and becoming a very successful one. As to me, I guess I have the same request. If you have time, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, as well as leave a review, because it really helps me grow. And I really, really appreciate every single one of you. So that was it from me, and I hope to meet you on the next episode.